Hi, good afternoon. Welcome back to more great content with DestiCon. I am really excited about our today. I've got longtime colleague and friend Laura Mandala and new friend Larry Cohen to talk today about not wasting a recession. And really, for me, I feel like most people try to pull back, like you're supposed to save money, you're supposed to pull this way, but there's smart ways to do things. And my panelists today are going to take us through a little bit of that. So without further ado, I'm going to ask each one of you to tell us who you are, a little bit about your history, and a little bit about how you're in tourism and what you're doing now. Laura, do you want to kick that off for us?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Mandala. Our firm is Mandala Research, and we've been in travel and tourism for over 2 decades now and have worked in every sector of the industry. Started off with Marriott Hotels, working across their entire portfolio, and then launching off from there into other segments and even serving as VP of Research at the U.S. Travel Association. So now we're continuing in travel and tourism, even post-COVID, have made some really good new alliances with some new partners, and looking very much forward to the future in this new economy.
Awesome. Hey, Larry, I love that fire.
Well, it's chilly enough up here in Connecticut where I'm located, and it helps. It's nice. It keeps us warm. I've been involved with the publishing and advertising side of the tourism and travel industry since the mid 1980s. I was publisher of corporate meetings and incentives. I started my own company, Northeast Media, in 1990, and we're still rocking and rolling. We have really sort of focused over the last 25 years or more on international inbound, but of course something called the COVID situation made us look at the domestic side as well. We've been fortunate enough to morph domestically digital products. Always been involved in publishing, and now it's publishing on paper and publishing digitally as well.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And congratulations. It sounds like your company has survived several recessions.
Yes. Recessions are us.
That's why I knew you were right on the panel today.
Okay.
Well, let's kick it off with just coming off of our session title there. So, not wasting a recession. What does that mean to you, Larry?
Well, recessions are always an opportunity to gain share. Depending on a company's or management's appetite for doubling down and maybe taking a bit of risk, there are always going to be winners and there are always going to be losers. And the opportunity to not waste a recession, to take a good hard look at one's company and say, well, what can we be promoting? Where can our competitive advantage be? Is magnified with the recession. One of the things that I think is important to recognize is that a recession is a slowdown. It's not a stoppage. There is business to be had, and one just needs to be a little bit savvy about how one goes about getting it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Those are great answers. Laura, what do you think in terms of not wasting a recession? What are some of the strategies you've seen? What are some of the suggestions you give to your clients?
Well, I was going to answer your first question. What does a recession mean to you?
Perfect.
And it really means, and I have to tell you, it means opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Once you kind of get over the new reality that revenue stream is going to change, it really is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to stretch.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this has been really remarkable and different from 2008. And I would love to get Larry's thoughts on that from the, Recessions Are Us guy. If he thinks this one has been different, because in this situation, Larry, everybody in our industry was in the same boat, essentially. Right? In 2008, it's kind of varied depending on your, investment in real estate and who your clients were. But here, everybody was in the same boat.
For a period of time. I think everybody was in the same boat during the first 3 to 6 months after COVID caused us to stop. But by the summer of 2020, there were pockets of opportunity where we saw those destinations that were wide open. Those destinations with smaller populations, those destinations that were not as congested, which by their very nature gave the traveler an opportunity to separate from other people, but still have a travel experience. Those destinations did very, very nicely. I'm thinking particularly the Mountain West.
Absolutely.
Mountain West did very, very well during compared to the rest of the country. And we got involved with a product that was aimed at identifying repeat visitors, people who've been to a destination before. A digital product that we developed right in the heart of that. We launched it in July of 2020, and most of our early advertisers were from the Mountain West. Up and running, they were getting revenue from tourism. We really couldn't talk much to urban destinations at that point, but that was a very, very interesting opportunity for us.
So when you're and that makes a lot of sense for those who were able to do that during that time. So for the urban areas who weren't able to actually market for a short-term turnaround in terms of bookings, what kind of suggestions would you have, or have you had, for those who may have a compression for some change reason? It may be a recession, it may have been the pandemic, it could be weather. If they've got a small compression, should they also continue to market and advertise?
They certainly should. Of course, you'd expect me to say that since I sell advertising. But at the end of the day, the opportunity to continue to advertise when others don't, and there have been studies after studies after studies about advertising in a recession. There's the most recent article about this was in the Harvard Business Review, was published in August of 2020, and what this spoke to was, again, advertising in a recession, promoting in a recession. And one of the case studies was the case of a consumer packaged goods company, Benckiser, that have products that we all know, like Clearasil, Calgon, Lysol, Woolite, but those are all pretty much discretionary products.
Mm-hmm.
So do you need any of those? And what they found was that in the 2008 financial crisis, during that recession,
mm-hmm.
they increased their advertising 25%.
Wow.
And they grew revenues by 8%. They grew profits by 14%, and most of their rivals were reporting 10% declines.
Wow.
So the notion of advertising, promoting during a recession, no matter how deep, no matter how shallow, has been identified and reported about primarily in the Harvard Business Review over and over again. I mean, this has been like that if you invest and your competitors don't, you will gain share. You will come out of it better than you went into it.
I love it.
I've seen similar things, similar research, Larry. Also, Deloitte has done a lot of analysis on this. That the companies that did best after COVID and after 2008, they looked at the 2008 recession as well, are those that not only invested in marketing, but were investing in all aspects of their business, technology, customer loyalty, as if preparing for the end. I mean, that is, they were confident it was going to end, and they needed to be prepared to hit the ground running, when it ended. So it's continuing to invest. And I'm so glad you had that study handy. And I think it's a great time, since we're on the topic, Larry, because I don't think you're going to toot your own horn too much here. But, we talked at IPW, you and I, and you were, really excited and really having a lot of success with the new product your team developed during COVID and launched, as you said, in the summer of 2020. So I think this would be a great time to talk about what that does, because it is digital, and I think it's something that a lot of folks at DestiCon, can take advantage of.
It's been fun. We launched the product that we now call Spearfish, because it is the exact opposite of casting a wide net. Spearfish is a product that focuses on repeat visitation. We found over and over and over again that the bulk of most destinations visitors had been there before, and in many cases, the prior year. We had an opportunity to look at studies that were conducted by companies such as Longwoods and their competitors, and what we saw was, where they asked the question about prior visitation, you might see anywhere from 70 to 80% of the visitors in a given year having been there the prior year. So the notion of creating a product that reaches repeat visitors, prior visitors, is what we did with Spearfish. And what we've been able to do is, in a matter of 2.5 years, create a product that has been used now by 70 DMOs in the U.S., both for domestic tourism and international inbound. And the basic premise is, we find people who have been to your destination in the prior 12 to 18 months. And we are able then to deliver advertising specifically to those audiences. And we just surpassed at the end of last year. We just surpassed in a 2.5 year period, delivering 200 million impressions.
That's amazing. That is
a lot of fun.
Larry, can you say how you find those people?
Yeah, we have relationships with the credit card issuers to be able to track the credit card spend, and we are able to determine where within the U.S. As granularly as DMA specific. Most of the time, our advertisers are pretty relaxed about their targeting. They'll have specific destinations that they're interested in seeing as a competitive set. But 90% of the time, what we're looking at is people who have been to a destination within the last 12 to 18 months, and then deliver the advertising to them on curated networks of brand safe websites in each market. And we're now not only delivering that on a domestic basis, but over the last year and a half now, as international inbound started gearing up, and of course, international inbound aside from Canada and Mexico kicked in just in November a year ago. We're generating programs that are reaching about a dozen overseas feeder markets.
I'm really glad you mentioned the brand safe websites about what your program does too, because, with all the privacy issues and all the things going on with, the spray and pray kind of remarketing approach, I think what you're doing sounds really smart.
We're having a lot of fun, and what's lovely is when we start seeing year after year, because we're now into three cycles, from in terms of fiscal years, and we're now seeing in most cases, not only are we seeing repeat advertisers, but the advertisers are increasing in double-digit growth or more in each year. So
that's incredible. That's incredible.
It's been fun.
Hey, Laura, I want to ask you a quick question too. So from the advertising standpoint, if we pivot to the research, so a lot of times when people slow down a little bit, even though Larry and I are both on the same page, being from the ad industry, you shouldn't really slow down your advertising. But if there's time to make hay during a slowdown period, what's the best way a travel company, a tourism company, or a DMO can make the best use of their time with research?
Well, research, I would really focus on that customer research. People have been to your destination before, understanding what they liked, what they didn't like, how you can improve the experience, how you can stay in touch with them, what are the best ways to communicate with them, what are they interested in about your destination that you can continue to feed them information on, and explore the types of experiences you have to offer that they may not have experienced. So maybe they came for a family reunion, and you've got a tremendous wellness package, or you've got sustainable tourism experiences, and so on. Feed them those possible experiences. Another thing that I don't think destinations do enough, and I talk about it all the time whenever I do have engagements like this, is to remember to cross-pollinate. So if somebody's in your destination, you have their attention, let's say for business, and your business travelers are, especially if you've got, large-scale meetings and conferences. But that's an opportunity, and not so applicable right now with the COVID situation, but to with them what the leisure opportunities are, because historically that really was never done. We never talked to business travelers about coming back with your family and here are the leisure opportunities. There has been a lot of effort to create leisure and have the business traveler stay longer and extend, a day or so. And usually the conference organizers will handle that. But when you've got the leisure traveler market like you will now, there's an opportunity to also communicate what maybe the family reunion opportunities may be, what those business, why it's a good city for business. And I hear some noise.
Yeah, I think you've got a tiny bit of feedback, but we can still understand you.
Do you think it's me? I mean,
Maybe.
What could be causing it?
I don't know. Do you have two tabs open of the same thing, or maybe a two screen? This is live. This is what we're good. It's all part of the process.
Is this what happens?
It's your electric personality, Laura.
Answer.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
Topic, the third slide that Jennifer that you had.
Let me share that for us real quick.
This is this is some Longwoods research. It's the one from Missouri.
There we go.
And what's sort of interesting here is how visitation can help increase economic development image of a destination. You know, we always think in terms of visitation. Tourism. This was a really, really good slide on the research that Longwoods did for Missouri, where those who have visited the destination have a much higher impression of it as a place to live, start a career, start a business, attend college, to retire, all of those various things that you know, we don't necessarily discuss in the tourism context, but tourism drives so much more that I think that this is something that thing to remember relative to what it is.
Right.
I had trouble hearing Larry there.
You have trouble hearing me?
Did you, Jennifer?
I'm hearing okay, but you never know. And we'll just make sure to keep that in the chat too. But I love what you said, Larry, about the way that connects with each other, because what you're finding after the pandemic too is a lot of people connecting together, from the DMOs to the chambers, the EDCs, the city sides. It's all kind of starting to connect.
Yes. Yeah. Now I mean the non-tourism effects of tourism,
Right.
that we can't forget about, because it's important. You know, it's you know, I like saying that if you get somebody who is a business leader to take vacation in your destination, and they like the destination enough that maybe they want to move the business there, you've just done an economic development fan trip that the target paid for.
Absolutely. That's a really good point to that. Laura, are you seeing any kind of cross-functional research or studies going on between DMOs and their cities or their EDCs that kind of underscores this?
I've seen a little bit of what Missouri's done here. Yeah, there's more destinations looking at economic development and recognizing visitation by travelers. You know, is certainly one indicator that they should be looking at. I can't say I've seen it a lot, but I think some forward-thinking destinations are doing this. Ones who, do have a mission to increase jobs and their tax base and attract large companies.
Right. I think it's been easier for the small ones to stay nimble in that than it is the large ones, because when you have a large DMO, a large city, a large chamber, they have more conflicting goals than you do in a little bit smaller a tier 2 or a tier 3 destination, where they're more nimble to work cross-functionally. Larry, did you want me to show some more of this research? Tell me which slide you want.
I mean, I'll just run through the other two slides if you want to go to the top one there.
There we go.
This is, just sort of showing how, this is with South Dakota, where the people who have been to the destination just have such a much stronger positive impression of the destination, that it makes it easier to market to repeat visitors, which is why you see on average 70% of a destination's visitation in a given year being from that prior visitor pool. As you'll see here, the South Dakota product and image information for recent visitors versus never visited. In some cases, it's 60, 70, maybe 80% stronger for the person with the visitation experience. And if you go down to the Maryland slide, Jennifer, can you
Yep.
go a little bit? Here, what you're looking at is just a return on investment analysis. This was done by destination analysts, where you'll see that that the people who visited Maryland in the past 6 months have just a much higher recall of the advertising message than those who did not. So there's a strong correlation between prior visitation and future visitation that you see over and over again in destination research. So the best pool, particularly if we're looking at a recession, and we don't know how deep the recession is going to be.
True.
Or it could be very, very mild. I spend time on watching Bloomberg every morning, and almost every day the story changes a little bit, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a super deep recession if and when it comes.
Yeah.
But rather one that just gets us back on what economists would consider to be somewhat of equilibrium. So in this case, the notion of reaching those people who've been to your destination before, they really will be a destination's best source of future business for time to come.
For sure.
I think
Sorry, go ahead.
the only question with regard to recession is how they come, how they spend, where they stay. Will they look at ways of economizing a little bit? But by and large, the pool of prospective visitors that is reflected by prior visitation is something that is very, very, very important, particularly if we're in a tough economic situation.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the Longwood's doing this with you. I love Amir and his group. And if you notice, just their latest travel sentiment just dropped recently. When you talk about how deep a recession is going to be, I think it's showing, though, in those numbers that regardless of even the consumer's perception of it, the majority of people have really no plans to change their travel plans.
Right. I mean, travel's important. Will people scale down in terms of accommodations? Maybe go down one notch. We'll see. That gets to the question then of what the hotel community does. Going back, and we can get rid of these slides now. I think going back to a number of slowdowns in the past. I remember immediately you'd see hotels drop their rates. As soon as they saw that there was weakness in the market, they dropped their rates, and all of a sudden, what a 4-star was charging, the 5-star is charging. What the 3-star was charging, the 4-star is charging. Everything drops down, and everybody's scrambling for share. And the challenge there is if it's a shallow recession, you don't really want to panic in terms of rate. I think maintaining rate is going to be an important consideration in however we come out of this, whenever this is. And I'd suggest that as a DMO can't really get into a rate discussion because that's not what they're supposed to be doing. But I do think, though, that a general consensus of here's what the DMO is going to do to continue to generate visitation so that you can try to keep your rates at a certain level for the hotel side is going to be an important consideration.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about RevPAR too. People panic on that. But I think also the brand damage that it does when you put yourself on sale so much
Yeah.
is a long-term brand damage. So we want to see
Yeah.
those destinations staying healthy with the RevPAR.
Yeah.
I
So
want to add.
sure,
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead, Larry.
No, I was just filling time. Go ahead.
Now, I just wanted to add to that same, conversation and see if Larry and you agree, Jennifer. In this period, is to also, in addition to those past visitors, but also reevaluate and focus on what really differentiates you from your competitive set. I think there needs to be more focus on what can visitors find only here. Let's say Annapolis, Maryland. That
Right.
you can't find elsewhere, and really, really emphasize, those attributes, because that fits in with this larger trend of the experience culture, right? People want to have that experience, and they want a unique experience. They want to be able to go back, and it happens a lot among millennials and younger, want to go back and report, that they had this very special experience, at this destination. So I think that kind of goes in tandem, with what we're talking about too. And I think it's actually going to be necessary, Larry, because how many times can you go back to Maryland? How many times do you want to go back to Maryland? As lovely as it is and diverse, I mean, at some point, the traveler is going to look around and say, look at West Virginia and
There,
elsewhere. So the more I think we focus on with those unique characteristics that differentiate it, is also putting us in a better light.
I'm glad you mentioned the experience economy on that too, because you're right. That's growing and it's changing by the day too, in terms of what people are into, what kind of things they want to consume. As far as the repeat visitation, though, the generational travel boom that's starting to happen again is a great thing also for repeat visitation, because you start traditions. And so they're going to want to come back to Maryland, every summer with the grandkids or the whatnot, because it starts a tradition also.
the notion of the person who's trying to add notches to their travel belt with multiple experiences
Mm-hmm.
versus what really does seem to be somewhat more the case, where people do tend to repeat. Now that doesn't mean that it's their big vacation.
Right.
It does mean that they have visited the destination that they're visiting at this point in time, sometime within the last 12 to 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
And that does tend to be the norm. I think that there are probably two different types of ways that you can identify that phenomenon. That's probably something that maybe we should talk to Amir about, with regard to the big vacation versus the smaller chunk of long weekends, and how that all tends to fit. But at the end of the day, if we take a look at the example of international inbound, nearly 90% of the visitors to the US from the UK each year
Mm-hmm.
have been here before. 80% of Germans who come to the US have been here before. The Brits average 1.7 trips per year. The Germans nearly two times per year. So the notion of repeat visitation, now granted, that's to a large country. It doesn't mean they're going to the same place in the US each time.
Right.
But there's a in that case, that there's a certain number of
Mm-hmm.
active visitors to the U.S. that you can narrow down as who your sales and marketing efforts ought to be addressed to within the U.S. domestically. What we generally are seeing is very, very strong positive response from people who are being served ads um, from destinations that they've been to in the last 12 to 18 months. And I don't think there's enough being done in this right now. But my contention is that those destinations, knowing that they're going to be advertising to that market, ought to be talking about the new things in their destination, the reason to be coming back. Those are important considerations rather than using the same advertising for everybody. Not happening yet. It's early days in the conversations that I'm having, but it's a lot of fun to be able to take a look at that and say, hey, wait a minute, guys. These people are coming back and back and back. It's giving them reason to spend more time and more money when they do come back.
Absolutely. So Laura, when Larry's tech and advertising works so well, what happens when it's over tourism? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that becomes a whole destination management, issue that hopefully they've been thinking about before now, and have some strategy for. But, I think every destination that's on the cusp of that needs to think about, how they're going to handle the flow of travelers, given perhaps the timing of visitation, how long, a tour bus can stay at a particular destination, the hours of attractions, and how many hours visitors have, at the attraction during those hours. So, I mean, there's all kinds of tools they can use on site, and it's going to have to be employed if they want to avoid situations that Maui and, Venice and others encountered.
Well,
Yeah.
I think also that the targeting of the prospective visitor just needs to get perhaps a little bit more narrow in their marketing. That has something to do with it as well. Now, Mammoth in California a few years ago did something that was, they were seeing over tourism. They were seeing people who weren't necessarily well behaved. And what they ran for a very short period of time, just to call attention to it. And they knew it wasn't going to be a campaign that had great continuity. But they started running a campaign, no bleep heads allowed. And it started the discussion of, first of all, what acceptable behavior is, and then secondly, it allowed for them to then have a serious conversation about that what was on the cusp of being over tourism, or certainly tourism from the wrong kind of visitor. And I think that identifying the right kind of visitor, identifying a visitor and promoting to a visitor that has the right kind of attributes, whether it's what their interests are, whether it's financial attributes, whatever it might happen to be, that all gets into part of what this is about. And I think, as I recall, a while ago, Utah started trying to move people around in the various national parks, because some of them were getting overrun.
Oh, right, yeah.
Where others were less well visited, and they were trying to manage that inventory. And I think, I've not seen any type of analytics on it, but from conversations that I've had, it appears that that's been reasonably successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to talk about something else that I've been seeing, Jennifer, that I think has been really effective.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect.
All right.
You're good.
Live events. Well, firstly, let me preface it by saying our friend Valerie Knobloch, who I know Larry knows very well, up at Finger Lakes, pioneered this over, I think, about 20 years ago. But it hasn't taken root in as many places as it should. And during this these economic downturns is a perfect time for destinations and their counterparts, their attractions, their restaurants to start looking at this model. But what they did was create the Finger Lakes, as a DMO. Instead of, they used to operate as tiny little towns in upstate New York that happened to be around pretty lakes, and thought that they were, competing against each other, trying to bring people to their properties, their restaurants. And finally, under Valerie's leadership, saw that if we marketed ourselves as a region, we'd be much more successful. And I'm not going to belabor that any further because I think it's obvious to those of us who are, seasoned in the industry, how effective that is in attracting travelers, because, the rising tide lifts all boats, and they put all their very small budgets of marketing dollars together to have a very effective level of marketing. And so what still is remarkable to me is how many destinations, how many regions don't do that. There's still that, very strong competitiveness. But those who are, are thinking about it, this is the perfect time during a recession or an economic downturn to take those steps and develop those relationships and plan for what the regional affiliation will look like, and how they can co-promote and establish maybe co-loyalty programs and, really have an effective campaign. I think this is just the perfect time. And feel free to jump in with your thoughts on that. But I think the time couldn't be any better.
I think I'm really glad you brought up Finger Lakes because I've seen, just coming out of the pandemic too, I know Central Coast California, which is those 4 regions of that beautiful, Pacific One original road trip that came together under the banner, the original road trip. And what better way to come together with some co-opetition? And it's made a big difference to moving around. These are all rural destinations in that area. This isn't LA. It's not San Francisco. It's the most gorgeous, region of that area. And it's a vast region. When you're talking about Finger Lakes, you have a smaller region, but even the bigger regions are doing well. The states, is another way you can get in, but they kind of have their own agenda. But I really like the Finger Lakes example.
Well, on the international side, the states have been doing this for a long time. Whether it was Capital Regions, Discover New England, Travel South, Great Lakes USA, and what's now Great American West, used to be called Rocky Mountain International. Yeah, they've been doing that as they could internationally, and coming together and having a lot bigger bang for the buck when they do that. But even a region in southwestern Illinois, opposite St. Louis, where you've got I think it's 5 or 6 counties that are working together. Corey Jobe, the former state travel director for Illinois, is running that region, and it's just interesting to see how they're able to do more together than any of those counties could have done on their own, and it's working for them.
That's just fiscally responsible. Also, since we're talking about money and recession, that just seems like a smart fiscal responsibility to do.
They've been doing that for a while, and it truly is working. And multi-county, multi-city marketing, whether it's a formal, whether it's a formal entity, or whether it's just a cooperative market initiative, either way it works.
Awesome. What are the biggest pitfalls you would advise your clients to watch for if a recession comes in, depending on how shallow or deep it is?
Mm-hmm. I wish you would have prepped me on that one. I think that
I think off the cuff, Larry Braid.
No. Yeah, I think that unless it's a huge cliff that we come off of, and I don't think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a mild recession. From what I'm reading and hearing, probably mid-year this year, maybe a little bit later, but not anything as deep as some of the things that we've been through in the past 20 years. It's going to be pretty much stay the course if you can. A lot of the destinations, are operating on trailing revenues anyway, or their budgets are based on trailing revenues. So, they should be able to maintain a reasonably active marketing role and weather the storm to the point where that next cycle of revenue, which would have been reflective of when the recession may have affected the tourism tax intake, if that's what the model is, won't have been so bad. Really, what you're doing is protecting your future if you can. But that's again, particularly when all of this may be based on room tax and things of bed tax, things of that nature. Trying to make certain that if they can, if the hotel community can maintain rate as much as they can. If they're not able to maintain rate, a lot of bad things happen.
That's so true.
You know what I've been focusing on, Jennifer, both in my own practice and with clients, are new strategic alliances. Okay, so who can we work with where we share, a common interest and have some kind of overlapping customer base? I'll give you a great example. I'm working with a high-end, a luxury residential and multi-use developer, and they want to reach high-end purchasers of vacation homes and vacation rentals. And so they want to reach those folks, through research. And we certainly, can find them and survey them. But at the same time, let's look at another angle, because it's a tough audience to reach. And is there another way to reach them? And are there other ways we can be influential that will be beneficial to the brand? Well, in our recent meetings, we realized high-end designers who are designing for the owners of this property are influencers. And the affluent people that the client's trying to reach are actually following these designers who are brands in their own right. So now we've got this, we're working hopefully to develop an effort to do outreach to the designers to get them involved in the brand and see how there can be some kind of a formal or informal collaboration, because they both share the same audience and they both have very similar interests in kind of elevating, that experience of, residential living.
I love that.
Yeah. I think that's a fun one. At the same time, there are associations that have interest in what our clients are doing as well. So look at an association that might be interested in sustainable living. If you've got a client or a hotel brand that is also promoting sustainable, experiences and the sustainable, development. And is there an opportunity there to either conduct some research together, have a kind of a co-marketing campaign, maybe even just have a reception and introduce one another to their constituents, to try to just evaluate what might we be able to come up with together. And I have just found this period since COVID in previous economic downturns is just ripe opportunities, taking the time to think about those really innovative kinds of alliances. And I just am excited about it. And I think hopefully, it'll be fruitful. I think it will be.
Yeah, I think that spirit of cooperation with the pandemic, and I'm so glad that it kind of came back in a whole different way for all of us, and hopefully continues to go. I know, it makes for strange, but I think it's working out really well, and I love the fact that you're bringing an influencer market into this too, because I think that's something also everybody should be really mindful of, especially in a recession, is watch pop culture, watch what's going on social media, make sure taking the influencers leads in terms of the marketing. I mean, what did Andy Warhol say? Everyone's going to have 15 minutes, and it's probably right now.
What one of the things that Laura made me think of when she was talking about her example was the phrase that Rosemary McCormick at Shop America had used forever, and that is when you get disparate and sometimes competitive elements and entities working together, it becomes coopetition.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a term that I think just really sums up what the travel industry is about anyway, because so many of these are competing with each other, but at the end of the day, they're trying to cooperate for the greater good of the destination.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful. This is such a great discussion. I knew this was going to be a fun panel. Any parting thoughts and advice for our listeners? We've got just a smorgasbord here. We've got destinations in, we have short-term rentals in, we have attractions in.
Well, I would like to share the very preliminary results of our short travel pulse survey. We just sent it out, inspired by this panel, actually. So I decided to do an industry survey on how organizations have handled the economic downturns. And these are preliminary. Don't quote them yet. We don't have a large enough sample size.
You're being recorded.
But listen to this. After what was just said here, 90% of the respondents say that they have been nurturing current relationships. 60% have been developing new relationships. 40% say they've had new marketing campaigns. 20% say they've had new marketing programs they've put in place. 30% say they've reduced staff. 50% say they've reduced budget. So we'll have more to report after that, because we've also asked them about some qualitative, we've asked some qualitative questions. So we'll get a little more richness there, but stay tuned for that. But again, relationships we're at the top. This is the time to, determine what more we can be doing, with those relationships in our communities and looking outside the box.
That's awesome. Thank you for doing that. How can our viewers find you or find that information, follow you?
Well, they can send me an email, laura@mandalaresearch.com.
Yeah, if you want to pop that in the chat or in the lobby, make sure everybody gets in touch. Larry, what are your final thoughts for us?
I think that if we're looking at a challenging market in the future, if we're looking at a possible recession or slowdown of whatever degree it is, I think the challenge that the DMOs have is working with their hotels, and they have to dance around a lot, but working with the hotels, trying to convince them that for the benefit of the destination overall, that rate needs to be held, if at all possible, and that the DMO will will have skin in the game in terms of working harder to make certain that the visitation does come. I just think that's likely to, you may have some rate pressures if in fact there's a slowdown, but I think the DMOs, if they can get the hotel partners within their destination to stay together and stay the course, it'll be better for everybody.
I think that's great advice. So how do our viewers get in touch with you and hear more about your programs?
I'm Larry Cohen at northeast-media.com.
Awesome. And everybody will be able to connect with Larry and Laura through the lobby, through the people page. You can connect on the back end there if you'd like to as well. Thank you both so much. What a great and interesting conversation. I appreciate you lending your mind and your brilliance and your time to all of us.
Oh, thank you. It's been great fun.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for organizing it.
You're welcome. We'll see you guys in the next session.